IVM.
Hello, Ayushi.
Hi, Tash. Good morning. Good afternoon. Sorry.
Good afternoon. And listeners, good whatever time of day it is to you. Welcome back to yet another episode of Agla Adulthood.
And we have a special episode. This is a special episode because we have a guest. Sort of. We have a kind of guest.
Yes. So, India is a very big country.
Wow.
And
What a
as a
segue.
child, I would just like to say, I wasn't aware of the actual diversity in the country when I was a little girl.
Oh, you were
And
little
now,
girl.
welcome to adulthood. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? There's a lot going on. And one of our friends from school is working on a very cool project. And what started off as she wanted to talk to us about our experiences just for the magazine. Now that I've introduced her a little bit, but wait, go with me, guys, everybody. Then this became like a collaboration of sorts. So without me further going on and on, guys, welcome Salomi Desai.
Hi.
Hey, Salomi.
Hi.
Hi, Salomi.
Hi.
Welcome to Agla Adulthood. We are thrilled to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Why don't you give us a little background on what made you reach out to us and like what your idea was and how this kind of magazine
Has now escalated to this.
Yeah, like the magazine that Rytasha has referred to with no context. Give us the context.
Sure. Okay. So, I'm actually a type and graphic designer. So this magazine started off a little bit later after I started this project where I'm working on creating this Latin and Devanagari font family. This is basically it originated from the fact that, as you said, we live in this sort of like a bubble in India where we think that we're English speaking, so we think that, oh, okay, maybe it's only English and Hindi, but it's actually a country which is so filled with different languages and different scripts. But in terms of the fonts that are available in the country, there's not so much diversity in terms of the availability, especially in terms of Devanagari scripts, which represent the languages of like Hindi, Sanskrit, Marathi, just to name a few of them in India. So I wanted to create something which kind of gives options to people in a country of 1 billion, where they can voice their different opinions and their different stories in more than just one font. And then I kind of took it a step ahead and thought, why not create a literary magazine, because this is the idea of giving voices to different people. So I wanted to create a magazine where it's not only a magazine only in English or in Hindi, but it's a bilingual magazine of English plus Hindi to just start off with, so that people can contribute irrespective of the language that they're comfortable in writing in. And that kind of exposes us to different cultures in India. And we are kind of forced to read things in different cultures. So if someone is writing in Hindi, that is opening up completely different avenues and completely different insights into the world of India. So that's where I kind of started with, and I got in touch with you guys because I think you're perfect for talking about this topic of cultural diversity and like celebrating the richness of India, because that's something that we kind of get aware of as we're growing up and as we're interacting with different people in the country. So yeah, that's a little bit about what I'm working on.
It's so cool. Like when you started talking to us about it, when you introduced the topic to both of us, it kind of course, first it was immediately interesting, but my mind did go to the podcast for the simple reason I was like, this is an adult topic. Like as you grow up, you realize that the first thing is looking outside yourself, and you don't realize that language is also a barrier that you need to look outside of.
Yeah, because I mean, as the age-old saying is, like, language is a carrier of culture. And
exactly. So immediately made me think, I was like, well, this is a conversation actually for adulthood, not just like first of all, it came to the forefront that we don't have fonts. Like the way that you explained it via the avenue of fonts was like, yeah, that's true. We don't have a lot of fonts. And maybe that's the reason why we don't connect to a lot of languages, because we're not used to seeing them maybe in an appealing way, or they're not very accessible to us. But then you started realizing that actually this is more about language and what, as a tool, what does it represent? And then that's why, like when Tash and I were talking, when we had that follow-up conversation, we were like, dude, this works. Like this is a conversation worth having. It's necessary, I think, to talk about it.
Definitely, especially like when you're staying in a country which has like so many different cultures around you, like you end up interacting with all of them, right? And then you have this khichdi of languages where you're talking in Marathi, English, Hindi, everything like mixed up in one conversation. Is pretty amazing.
And it's, in a way, sometimes language is very binding, but it's also alienating. Language, when I was thinking about it a bit more, it also, like, Tash, don't you think like the idea of accents also plays a huge role in language? Like the Bombay accent, the Delhi accent, the Bengali accent in the South, how they roll their R's. Like all of those things play such a huge part in even immediately identifying. You get tagged by your accent and the way that you communicate in a language. And it's so country specific that, when you're outside of India and you hear someone speaking Hindi, you immediately know which part of the country they're from, because you're like, hey, that Hindi with that twang, that's North India. This is South India.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's why I'm super excited that you brought this to us. I think Tash and I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's just really been pretty crazy how the journey of exploring the country and exploring the cultures that exist within. And within that also, like how every community and society is different, how that also bleeds into mindsets and the vocabulary we use and the kind of words we use. It also dictates, I think, to a certain degree, the way like even gender plays up in certain parts of the country, and it just bleeds into society in very many different ways. And yeah, it just blew my mind. I was like,
also, I think like this thing of like gender you're talking about, but also the fact that we have a language which distinguishes on the base of respect, like different words for different levels or ages of people. And like when you speak to someone younger, you have to change your like the what is it, the
pronoun,
not pronouns,
yeah.
but maybe the tense or the adverbs. Basically, things change, and it's, our language carries so much nuance in it, because just by the sentence you can understand the age of the speaker, the age of the person being spoken to. You can understand which part of the country they're immediately from. You can I think it's very distinguishing. But also, like, if we are ready to get into the meat of the episode,
Which is your statistics.
Listen, you got to start with them so you give the listener
like
a base of, like, to blow your mind, right? Because this is stuff that's relevant, I feel.
Come on, hit us.
So just from a simple Google search, you'll be able to see that India has 19,500 language/dialects spoken across east, west, north, south. That's basically around 20,000 different kinds of ways to communicate with each other. So that's not an exaggeration. That's like, there's 20,000 ways for you to say this. Obviously, this number ties in with the entire role of mother tongues as well. But to kind of distill this a little further, from this 19,500, 121 languages are spoken by more than 10,000 people. So that's like the grouping of, how strong they are. So even if you're looking at languages that are, if you want to take out the languages that are spoken by smaller, very niche communities, that's still 121 languages for 1 billion people. And like Salomi was telling us earlier, there's 13 different scripts just in India. Whereas in the West, it's kind of just 2. Most languages have emanated or use or piggyback up of just about 2 or 3 scripts max. Whereas in one country itself, we have 13. And this kind of just explains, I think, like the length and breadth of, I mean, it's a very obvious statement, like, oh, India's so big, but it really is diverse. And of course, this speaks to a lot of like politics as well, because it is hard to govern when people don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
But isn't it interesting, Tash, that it's like you and I speak English as our first language. At least I do.
Yeah.
English
Same.
as well as you.
I think in English, so
Yes.
that's I think what your first language is, right? The language in which you think.
And the language you dream in?
Yeah, I guess I don't have audio in my dreams usually, but that's another topic for another day.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say that's an interesting one that you don't have audio, but we'll come back to that in another way. But yeah, so you're looking at so many scripts, you're looking at so many languages, dialects, mother tongues, and if you just speak to your and my experience, it's like a microcosm in comparison to what the rest of the country operates in and speaks in.
Mm.
And just to give us a rough idea of the breakdown of spoken languages, Hindi is obviously the most widely spoken. About 43% of the population are first language Hindi speakers. So that also tells you just how populated North India is. It is. I mean,
we have a lot of babies.
yeah, because if UP is your most populous state, and of course, Hindi is not the only language spoken there, but North India, Hindi is predominantly the language of choice, right?
Yeah, correct.
After which there's Bengali, then Marathi, Telugu, Tamil, then Gujarati, Urdu, Kannada, Oriya, Malayalam, Punjabi, and then Sanskrit. I'm so impressed that Sanskrit even made it onto this list. And
yeah, that's...
And in direct comparison, 0.02% of the population speak English as a first language.
Yeah. Okay. Small number.
We are a scratch.
Yeah.
Are you overwhelmed by my numbers today?
Research. Yeah, like the numbers are very big. Yeah. Yeah. And while I was a kid, I thought everybody in India is like this. So when I went abroad to study, when I went to Singapore to study, and people were like, "Oh, you have an Indian accent," and all. I was like, "Are you mad? I don't have an Indian accent." People who've learned English as their second language, they have an Indian accent. I though don't have.
We also get the other thing, of like, "Oh, you guys speak English so well."
Yeah, but obviously everyone does. Everyone speaks English so well because we speak English so well. So I thought everyone speaks English so well.
No, I'm saying it from the other side of like I think there was a definite racist connotation there when you're being told, "Oh, you speak English so well." Like it's such a surprising, shocking thing.
Yeah.
But again, the first instinct that was offensive to us is because we do regard English as something that is an achievement or something to work towards speaking well. Like it is a point of pride, or it's like, no, of course we speak English really well. We went to that kind of school. We went to, we only hung around with people who spoke English well. Or,
I'm so over that now. I used to be like that a lot.
Yeah. So I'm saying that is our reference point when you stepped outside school and that little bubble of a very private school, South Bombay or Bombay existence that we'd have, because you want...
I'm cringing at... Anyway, sorry.
No, I mean, cringing is one thing, but it was a part of you. That was very much the narrative.
Yeah. So we all still are somewhere a part of it and know that it exists, and it's very much the way it is also. But now there's like at least some exposure or some scope to like branch out and learn more and have different perspectives. And that's so enriching.
I think for both of us, though, that huge step outside of in terms of just a language bubble was possibly work for both of us.
Yeah.
Like for you working, I think Bado was a huge kind of stepping stone for your now pretty flawless Hindi.
Yes, ma'am.
And
Hindi to काफी अच्छी हो गई है.
Yeah, and while my Hindi is still not as strong, me working in companies where I got to like interact with a lot of people from Delhi, where speaking Hindi is interchangeable with English and it's very part of the cultural vernacular as such. And then working at my current job where I get to go to different and you talk to people from different states, automatically you have to switch to a different accent. You have to switch to a slightly more accessible and understandable tone. You find yourself, I don't know whether you do it, but I know I do it, and I don't know whether this is a good or bad thing. But I do find myself toning down my English accent that I would have from just the way that I speak. I do tone it down just to make my English also slightly more accessible to people.
Yeah, fair.
Because you speak it in a slightly simpler way, because you're like, I just need to be to the point. I don't need to be flowery. I don't need to be beautiful.
Yeah, you don't need
with
to
it.
be impressive with language.
Yeah, but
you just need to communicate, which is actually the whole point of language, to communicate.
And I think effective communication really hinges on the intent and
Yeah.
like sometimes I think intent is more important than even the content. And language helps your intent, I think.
Yes.
Because when you make the effort to switch to another language, I think it does open up that thing of like, no, I'm trying to communicate in a language that is making you more comfortable, that helps you settle it. And by the way, that's a human nature. It's like a sociological phenomenon that, it's like why people mimic accents. Like when people are in England, you slightly have an English twang, or when you're in America, it's not actually out of anything else. It's to make the other person feel more comfortable.
Correct. So they understand what I'm trying to say, na?
Yeah.
They're used to hearing it in a certain way. It's like literally like how would people, if someone would come to India and Andheri, for example, a tourist wants to go to Andheri. Now, they need to say Andheri for the normal person to understand isko Andheri jana hai. If they have an accent, it's going to be very tough for the person. Of course, they will understand eventually. But also it's for that, no? So that people understand you. So even when I travel, wherever I go, I always put on an accent. Even if I'm speaking English, I'll speak it in their accent. As if that makes a huge difference. But I just love doing it. I'm like, if I can't speak your language, at least I will try to sound like I can speak
I was
your
about
language.
to say, like, I remember when I was a kid and we went to like France, because my mom speaks a little French, I took little words from her and I was like, bisou, oh no, it's okay.
Fully.
Like for no reason. It was just a douchey little child. But at its base level, at a very human level, the reason we mimic accents is to make the other person in the conversation feel more comfortable.
Nice.
And
I like it.
yeah,
Not
that's
bad.
it's a comes
Good
from
intent.
yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. It's about intent.
Nice.
And so when you kind of combine intent with language and your dialect and your all these different things, I think though that you have to make an effort to look outside your primary language to actually connect with the people around you.
100% in agreement with you.
And it is important to make yourself feel slightly uncomfortable initially.
It's a small price to pay to like uncover a whole world of like fun, because it's like hard to explain,
No.
but actually it's not hard to
Not at
explain.
all.
It's very easy to explain. Yeah.
It's
Tell me,
it's what
Ayushi.
Salomi said, right? Like it opens up an avenue, it opens up another story, it opens up a history of someone else, it opens up to their experience. So
Yeah, you just get more interesting insights into different experiences, which is so beautiful.
I think a small example would be, and again, I think this is a similarity that you and I have, is that and I'm speaking specifically, we're both Gujarati. So, grown up speaking it a little bit because we learned it from our families. But for me, to really get to the crux of a conversation with my grandparents, or to get that little nugget of that little history of theirs, or that special emotion that they're trying to get to me, it's way, way, way better when they tell me in Gujarati, when they narrate it,
obviously.
because their comfort level with Gujarati. But I also think the richness of the story is 10x when they are saying it in Gujarati as opposed to translating it to English.
Because the expression, the ease with which one can express oneself and articulate thoughts in their mother tongue or in their first language is just another kind of beauty. My family loves to like chat in Gujarati when we go to Navsari, and even at home sometimes, like we are very, I think since childhood have had this like we must speak English and Gujarati both at home.
Yeah.
It's important for the kids to learn Gujarati. So always with my grandparents, with extended family members, it was Gujarati, and I love it. I went through a phase in my teenage years when I was feeling like very cool in English, and I was like, I don't want to talk in Gujarati.
But I think we'll circle back to that. I'll touch upon it, the embarrassment that we feel of these
Yeah.
languages, and I think it's the connection to the word vernacular, but we can
It
speak
is this
more about
also
that.
this colonized nonsense. We have got this
Absolutely.
Angrez chale gaye, again hame chhod gaye. This is my biggest problem.
But they've left it. It's a cultural hangover. It's a colonized hangover.
Colonial,
It's a colonial
yes.
hangover where we're stuck with it. And it's also kind of the price you pay for globalization, because if you have such an integrated world, you need to communicate in the best possible language. And just through obviously years of the West being in predominance, English has become that mode of communication. So to be
And
a
all that is
global
well and good.
citizen, you
Yeah,
have to speak in English,
that's fine. That's great. वो सब ठीक है, but I think it's so important to have a really like active connection to your mother tongue and to whatever language it is that you speak, because I'm sure most Indians speak a minimum of two languages.
Yeah, and actually the usage of mother tongue as a
The youth of India, at least. Then?
Yeah, no, but
Sorry.
no, you're right. I do think the youth of India do speak at least two languages, even if one might be broken. But it's because the usage of mother tongue is as a teaching medium improves cognitive abilities, because it makes it easier for the child to understand a lesson in its mother tongue. So this has been like statistically proven that at a young age, if you're taught in the same language as your mother tongue, you have a connection with your parents in a way that actually benefits your cognitive learning. So you pick up nuances from your parents far quicker if they're in the same language that they are comfortable with as well. It just so happens that for us, we were taught those things in English because our parents taught in English. But I think our parents had the benefit of being taught in Gujarati. And then growing up in a metropolitan city that taught them English. So they had that kind of connect, whereas we did it backwards, where we were brought up in English, but then Gujarati was, kind of made sure that it was there so that you didn't forget that connect. But I think for most people in our generation, that's kind of, if you live in a big city, that's kind of becoming the trend. Is that English becomes the primary language because it's a language that you go to school in, most probably. It's a language that you have to work in. And it's also the language that a lot of media is now in. Have you noticed that? Yeah. That now even our Hindi shows, Bollywood or OTT platforms, we're giving people Indian English content.
Yeah.
Like your show, Masaba, was in English.
Because it's urban, no?
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, speaking to the urban experience, we are moving towards the thing where English is becoming our first language in urban centers.
In India, yes.
Yeah, in urban centers, that it is becoming that.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like there will be some amount of loss of like a kind of cultural depth, that a more wholesome kind of experience of what it means to be Indian, which is anyway such a complicated and intense feeling.
Yeah. You're right.
So this country is so overwhelming in every way, in every possible way.
I think though
and to grapple
the
with
burden of that does fall on us though. Like if you carry it as a shameful thing, it's going to be something you suppress. But if you carry your bilingual ability or trilingual ability as a point of pride to show it off, it can help you in volumes. Like people love to be in the West, people love to say, oh, I speak English and Spanish and French and German with this kind of flair. And you always look at these people like, oh my good God, like you are a linguist. Wow.
लेकिन हम भी तो लिंग्विस्ट है. मैं हिंदी बात कर सकती हूँ, मैं गुजराती बात कर सकती हूँ, अंग्रेजी बात कर सकती हूँ, हरियाणवी एक्सेंट में बोल सकती हूँ. अब और क्या चाहिए?
You can understand Marathi. I mean, I can understand Marathi, and maybe I can't reply in it, but I do understand it. So I think this is something that happened to me when I was still in college, is when, on forms, and it was like, oh, languages you speak, I made it a point to write all of them. I was like, I speak all of these. I wanted to be known that I also speak 4 languages. Okay, it's not French, but you don't speak Gujarati, so like it's cool. And then,
Language.
I should mind my language.
Yeah, you okay?
Sorry. Shall we take a break here while I go
Yeah,
wash
why
my mouth
not?
with soap and water?
Yes, let's take a break and come back.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another very special week on the IVM Podcast Network. Before I get to that, let me quickly thank our sponsors on the network this week. Storytel, thewholetruthfoods.com, and we have a new sponsor in Syed. Thank you all so much for being part of the network. So, this is Valentine's week, and we have a bunch of stuff for you guys. So I'm going to give you a couple of episodes that you could definitely catch up with. Agla Station, Season 2, Episode 12, Be Our Valentine. Rytasha and Ayushi have a little bit of talk about love and all the rest of the stuff that goes wrong with that. On The Habit Coach, Episode 396, Ashton Doctor did an episode which went into the much-debated origins of Valentine's Day. Also, do check out Candid Kannan with Siddharth Kannan featuring Govinda and his wife Sunita Ahuja. He talks to them about amazing 33 years together. But you know what, folks? If you want to hear more about these Valentine's Day things, what I suggest is go to our webpage, ivmpodcast.com/blog. And on the blog, we're going to post a bunch of different playlists that we've created for all the various major services. So if you're feeling in the mood for love, do check that out. You'll definitely enjoy it. Just a quick note on a few other noteworthy episodes this week. Nankari Kunal Vijayakar was the guest. They spoke about street food with him. On Simplified, they talk about vaccinating 1 billion people, then the logistical and administrative task in front of us. And on the Wire Talks, Siddharth talks to Devdutt Mukhopadhyay about the human cost of internet shutdowns. And with that, let me get you back to your show.
Welcome back.
Swagat.
स्वागत, आपका स्वागत है हमारे सारे दर्शकों का. दर्शकों?
You know,
नहीं, that means viewers. What does listeners mean? सारे सुनने वालों का.
yeah. So, you know, every time you say like sunne wala, I just hear that one song that that's the only word that immediately came to me.
सबसे आगे होंगे हिंदुस्तानी.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice, very nice musical interlude.
A musical
Ayushi,
interlude.
Let's circle back to our topic, shall we?
Yeah. I was going to ask you actually, do you remember you used to do an amazing impression of an air hostess welcoming people on board a flight in Hindi? You used to do it so well. And I used to be so jealous that you could do it with such fluency because I used to be able to mimic them well in English and, do the pilot's voice being like, we're reaching a ground stop.
Very nice.
Miles out, it's looking wet. And the way that pilots speak, and I remember we were on a flight and you were imitating the air hostess and you did it perfectly in Hindi so well in that specific way that a presenter or an air hostess or an announcer speaks. I remember being so jealous, being like, I wish I had that fluency or command over Hindi. Like I still think in English, translate, and then speak,
Yeah. अपनी सुरक्षा कक्ष को
कुर्सी की पेटी बांध लीजिए.
Yes. Seat belt. No, I've messed it up now. I didn't even remember I used to do this. But yeah, of course I must have.
Yeah, I remember it clearly. Where I think a couple of trips, like maybe to Goa or a wedding or something like that, we were flying together. And it was so good. It was so good. And
and jalpan, dude, jalpan means they're gonna serve food. It's my favorite. I love the word jalpan. So, for example, a word like jalpan now, मैंने सीखा कहाँ air hostess से सीखा है मैंने. अब मैं real life में use करती हूँ. Sometimes when I just feel like saying snacks and beverages, Hindi में I'm like, let's do some jalpan. कुछ jalpan हो जाए.
I remember when we were once on a flight. Again, this was the same flight, and she was like, Ladies and gentlemen, डरने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. हम सिर्फ एक छोटी सी storm के अंदर जा रहे हैं अभी. What an explanation! But I was like, okay, she communicated. It's a छोटा सा storm. We are just going through it, and those instances of having to switch to different languages and to communicate, it does kind of again connect back to what makes us feel comfortable, right? Because sometimes I think when you are spoken to in the language that is your mother tongue, I'm saying remove us from the situation, the level of comfort that makes you feel in that situation. Like so often you see people who are traveling by themselves. Maybe they are like, and I'm speaking about this airplane thing because this idea came to me is that, you see people who are traveling for the first time, perhaps a little bit elderly. They're not quite well versed with the hustle bustle of, the chopness of traveling now. And when an air hostess comes to them and says, ask them like, what language do you speak? And they're like, we speak in like Punjabi or Telugu or something. And they're like, oh, and a crew member speaks the same language. Immediately, I have seen situations where an auntie has just like kind of sighed a little relief and like sunk into her seat a little bit because the air hostess spoke Telugu and she was able to explain to her what's happening and don't worry, the food is coming, you can't get up, let the seatbelt sign go off, then you can go to the bathroom. And all those things those are like small but very key reminders at how important your mother tongue is to you. And just because you can speak in another language doesn't dilute the power that the mother tongue has in your cognitive thinking. Like if you think in Telugu, then that's the only way that you're going to be comfortable if someone explains it to you in that language. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, it was just a thought that came in my mind where it's a situation where you hear a lot of different languages at an airport,
Yeah, it is. That's so true.
It's always interesting to see how people interact. And like my experience has been kind of like when I'm traveling with, say, my grandparents and I speak to them in Gujarati. When I was younger and we were out and we would speak in Gujarati, I have to say I was a little embarrassed of it. Because there is this idea of it being a vernacular language.
Basically, you're like, हम classy है, हम English में बात करेंगे. Simple.
See, you said it better. I was trying to be fancy about it again.
बस वही है. It's that mindset कि हम classy है, we'll speak in English. Even I used to feel very unclassy speaking in Gujarati or Hindi for that matter. But now it's not such.
No, and that's because you've gotten better at it. But I think you're right.
Also, it depends on the situations one has been exposed to, in what kind of setting you've used the language or heard the language or got to practice the language.
Yeah. And I think that when you've only practiced the language inside your home, it feels like a very, this is an inside house language.
Secret language.
This is a language of disciplining, or this is a language of serious talking down. Because I remember that my father used to switch to Gujarati only when he was really pissed. Like I knew that he is pissed AF is when he switched to Gujarati. That's when I knew, I better run. Run, Ayushi. And that's why when you're outside and you're spoken to in Gujarati, I immediately, like, my skin prickles a little bit. I'm like, oh, what have I done now? Like, it's that I'm carrying that PTSD with me. But this idea of vernacular, right? So the word vernacular has been co-opted as a bad word. That's
oh my God. Can I pause to just remind our listeners and you of the moment in K3G where they're all shouting, Bernie, Bernie, Bernie.
Exactly.
What the hell was going on?
Has Rytasha cut out?
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. But you're right that imagine a whole school pointing at her saying Vernie, Vernie. And
I am part of the generation or part of the audience. And I know a lot of people are like me who've grown up on Hindi films. We've of course seen English movies, but I feel like Ayushi, maybe you've seen more English movies growing up, but I feel like I've seen a lot of bad and decent and okay Bollywood growing up.
Yeah.
Heard a lot of Hindi songs. Like I know a lot of old Hindi songs also. So the lot of Hindi, this Bollywood has crept into life also.
That's because, again, Bollywood glamorized not living and speaking in Chandni Chowk, but it's like London, Hum London
yeah.
वो London गया एक दिन मैं भी जाऊंगा.
For new age filmmakers who are making more realistic cinema. Yeah,
and I think this blend, this Hinglish, right? Hinglish of this medium of Hinglish as in films, in shows, in and I hope, like what Salomi was talking about, maybe in script, like maybe one day we'll be able to see this interchangeably, like English and Hindi next to each other, or more words kind of drawn from one language that can be pushed into Hindi, and Hindi words that can be pulled and used to describe. Because I also think English sometimes is a very limiting language.
Oh, absolutely. There's some things which you like that feel hi nahi aati.
Yeah, that's so true. And I learned this. I truly realized this when I used to work with a lot of people from Delhi.
Yeah.
Man, they are able to give the feel to a language that I could not do it. I just used to love listening to them because I was like, the way you describe this sabzi is just too good.
So I've just come back from Jaipur, no, where everybody's also like fab. This Hindi vibe is a vibe.
Yeah.
Full vibe. It's like Delhi only, I guess. That kind of
Yeah.
interchangeable energy that's there. And so they have said that my Hindi must be so bad that they have to talk slowly. I can't understand them and all. And I was like, no, guys, my Hindi is very good. ऐसी बात नहीं है. But so I've had to go to real North India and like convince them कि मेरी हिंदी अच्छी है. But they also must be looking down on me. Hey, Bombay wali, what Hindi will she speak
Yeah, because
properly?
we are at the bottom of the Hindi pile.
I will disprove that theory.
Now for the rest of the episode, you have to speak in Hindi.
ठीक है.
Except my challenge.
हाँ, हमने आपका चुनौती स्वीकार की.
Oh, okay then.
आपकी चुनौती. चल, बोल अब.
Okay, cool. Hey, this will be interesting. Fine. So, again, I feel like I'm going back because we keep losing our thread. Is that this vernacular, ये जो शब्द है, उसको co-opt किया गया है, actually. That's the thing. It's been turned into a bad word, but vernacular actually just means the language that you use as a communicative outside of the main one. So when you're talking about like, wait, I had this right here. The word vernacular helps express the language used is that of a specific group, especially when it is different from the standard language used in that particular setting. But it actually is only used like, see, because you're in a situation where everyone's speaking English, Hindi or Gujarati becomes a vernacular. But it does not mean that it is a language that is limited or it is a language of people who aren't able to effectively communicate. Because now vernacular, the word means he's a little vernacular, like he doesn't speak really well, he's not able to communicate effectively, like he doesn't have a good grasp or command over the language. And so when you say vernacular languages, it has a negative connotation. And this is where, ironically, words matter. How you use your words matter.
जी बिल्कुल, मैं आपकी बात से सहमत हूँ.
हमको थोड़ा एफर्ट करना पड़ेगा इसमें, थोड़ा ब्रेक डाउन करने में. Like, it's not a bad thing to speak in your vernacular language.
हमने अंग्रेजी को बहुत ही कुछ ज्यादा ऊंचे दर्जे पे रख दिया है और वो गलत बात है. बिकॉज हमने अंग्रेजी और इंटेलिजेंस का वो बना लिया है. And that is a big mess.
Yes, that's actually true. It's because we equate English with intelligence.
और यही सबसे गलत सोच है जिसको हमें पहले इस सोच को तोड़ना पड़ेगा ताकि हम आगे भी देख सके कि इंटेलिजेंस की कोई भाषा नहीं होती.
Oh, what a line! इंटेलिजेंस की कोई भाषा नहीं होती. हाँ, but ठीक है, सही बात है यार. Like you can't define how and where your intelligence can be communicated. It's communicated in any language, right? Like the Nobel Prize for any sort of development is not an English-based prize. And just because you can't understand physics in German doesn't mean that physics in German is wrong.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think this definitely you have to keep reminding yourself though. I think that's what this conversation is telling me as well, is that I'm going to try to speak Gujarati for the rest of the weekend with my parents today.
Bilkul. And another thing which I just want to quickly touch upon is in line with this shame and vernacular kind of the embarrassment or the like जब हम कहीं जाते, सपोज फॉरेन, स्पेन, इटली पहुंच गए, वहां के लोकल्स एक तो वो अंग्रेजी इतनी नहीं बोल पाते ना, बोल ही रहे ना अपनी अपनी भाषा में. हम उनको जज नहीं करते, हम सोचे वो वाओ कितने सेक्सी साउंड कर रहे हैं, वाओ. एंड हमारे यहाँ जब लाइक लोग हमारी भाषा में बात करें, लाइक या आप इंग्लिश क्यों नहीं सीखा, यू नो, व्हाई आर दीज डबल स्टैंडर्ड्स. लाइक ऑफ कोर्स दीज Latin based romantic languages is excusable, ठीक है, if you only speak that, but if you only speak your Indian mother tongue home language, then suddenly you're not good enough. Excuse me.
And the other thing is also like when French people, when they speak English, you're just like, wow, the French accent in English it's just so, it's like 360, you know?
Yeah, but
if someone speaks English with a Hindi accent or speaks it with a Tamil accent or a Telugu or a Bengali accent, you're kind of like, like it's so bong, dude. Like you know where they're from immediately, and you
start judging and all. It's horrible.
which is, I don't know why we became these people. I'm ashamed that's where we were, or that sometimes we are, and we just slip into the default. And
मुझे भी घिन आती है, कभी कभी मैं साउथ बॉम्बे पार्टीज में हैंग आउट करके एक दो शब्द हिंदी के डाल देती हूँ, तो मैं नोटिस करती हूँ, कोई कुछ बोलता नहीं है, लेकिन मैं सबके कान एक सेकंड के लिए नोटिस करती हूँ. They're just like tying little bit. Just a tad bit.
Or it's the other thing where they're just like, oh my God, that's so entertaining. Like, oh, you just peppered in Hindi. That's so funny. You know?
Yeah, either way. I hope it's the latter then.
And you know, you and I, we should take some blame on this personally also, is that when we were younger, we used to do this silly accent of someone who, remember the accent that we used to do when we were young? Like, which was a person who maybe didn't speak English so well.
Yeah, I know. And then we used to do it for fun, actually. It was very innocent.
It was. No. I'm not trying to say that, oh, I'm so sorry about that. I'm not apologizing for that. I'm saying it more like we used to do it because it was entertaining and we used to get a laugh. Like everyone used to laugh, and for us it was like, oh, it's such a good joke that you and I are the center of.
Opportunity instead of opportunity.
Yeah, and we used to say silly words in different, like with just the
different
accents. And then you see today influencers and these social media personalities and comedians and all have kind of even taken that to another level, have gotten kind of famous for it, or use it to create personalities and characters of like, oh, this is a very North Indian girl. She's from she's from this city. She's from there. And you see people in Bollywood now, when they have to represent that they're from a tier 2 or tier 3 city, immediately they put on that very typical accent. And you've caricaturized it actually, because you've turned it into a joke, first of all. And I think these are the things that we have to be a little bit more mindful of. And I'm not saying this in the way of like this full PC culture where you can't have a laugh. No, come on. I mean, there's this guy in my office and he's Bengali and he says like Oshish instead of Ashish. He says Oshish. And, we have a laugh and he has a laugh at us when we try to say like, when we say Rasgulla, he's like, what is a Rasgulla? You Maharashtrians. And I'm like, okay, there's this, it's like a funny conversation. It's okay. It's lighthearted. Again, the intent is not wrong. But when we've turned it into a cartoon, that's kind of, I think, the trap that we fall into. And then we play up to the thing of like, but, oh, it's all about English. It's about speaking well. It's about having this accent. And I mean, we're all guilty of it. And so thanks, Salomi, for making us.
We all do it. Yeah, really. It's definitely a thing we need to think about. That's for sure. If not to make changes, at least to be aware is the first step.
Yeah, because as you know, the show is not about, we are just trying to make
we don't have a fix. Yeah, we are not going to fix your life. We're just going to tell you
that there are some things in your life that you should take notice of.
Yes.
And take notice of your language. I think take notice of the way that you speak, who you communicate with. I think making an effort to be in touch with your heritage and your kind of your legacy in a way can make your life so much richer.
And also it can make you smarter and more emotionally sensitive to speak. And
EQ. Like it really helps your EQ, I think.
Yeah, तो कर लो भाई, बस कर लो, थोड़े और wholesome बन जाते हैं सब लोग मिलके.
How did you find that on set? Like, did you think that was kind of your stepping stone into turning more bilingual?
I just बड़ो बहू में तो सब हिंदी ही बात करते थे ज्यादातर. It was fun. Talk about different things. The experiences are very different. Backgrounds are different. People have come from various parts of the country. You're meeting somebody who grew up in Delhi, somebody who grew up in Bombay but grew up in a different part of Bombay. You're meeting somebody who's grown up in like a town outside of Bhubaneswar. And all of these people are sitting, and one girl has grown up in Assam. Everyone's having lunch together every day for whatever, 18 months. What happens? Like you're just having so much, like you're just learning about different people.
And at that level, Hindi was the common language, the kind of binder.
Yeah, Hindi is the binder on a set like that, in a workspace like that. At least in North India, yeah. Bollywood and the whole entertainment industry, I feel, is very Hindi driven.
Yeah, but it is Hindi driven, but yet we highlight the people who don't speak Hindi well.
Yeah, I know that is also a bit messed up. But ab kya kare?
No, I mean, you see so many of these newcomers who want to be in films and you see some of their new work and you're just kind of like, mate, I feel like you could have at least tried to, I don't know, work on this a bit more. Because it's very clear that you don't belong to this setting.
Oh, okay. There, no. So absolutely, you're absolutely right. That was now an acting problem. उसके लिए उनको acting classes की जरूरत है आयुषी जो एक अलग ही topic है जिस पे I have a lot of विशेष टिप्पणियां because I feel these star kids can afford the best of drama schools. They should definitely go before coming here to just start acting out of nowhere.
I love it when a star kid's like, I'm going to be an actor now. I'm like, right. Based on?
अरे बन जा यार, just go and learn it first. बन जाओ.
But these things all tie, and I think if you start thinking about it, like if you're driving just one day and you start thinking, or you're in whatever your commute, whenever you're listening to this show, whatever it is, if you just start thinking about the different ways that you use language and communicate in your everyday life, you'll realize that there are some times where you judge yourself, you judge others, you distance yourself from languages, you distance yourself from certain connections and connotations, and that I think that's detrimental to your growth as an adult.
Yeah.
If 500 million plus people speak a language, the world, like you have nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, even if it feels a bit uncomfortable, like you were saying earlier, to just get through that initial discomfort, because it will be very fun once you get to like vibe with people.
Yeah. It is.
It's a vibe, guys, and vibes are like human. There's no language in this good vibes section.
And language, when you are in a country where everyone around you, where phenomena can be explained is so much better in local language, why would you not refer to that first? Like, why do we not defer to Hindi when you're talking about Indian food or like haggling or this area of the city or like this street thing or this? And you're like, wo wahan, like it's here, it's just on that corner. You're like, Are, yahan se left lo, wahan se. And there is an effectiveness. It's not even just about the culture. I think it's just effectiveness of speaking in the language that's more acceptable is a good thing. We have to stop rejecting it,
Yeah.
Anyway, that's at least the effort I think that I want to make. 2021, it's going to be the year of more
peppering conversations with a little bit of this and a little bit of that. We can start with that.
Yeah. Or I think even starting at home is a good idea. Like,
what you're doing this weekend with your parents.
Yeah. And if you exactly. And I think if you have the access to your grandparents or family members who speak other languages or who speak your mother tongue, then why not try it out? Yeah. They might laugh at you, but isn't it nice that you'll give them something to laugh at in such a sweet, genuine way? They might help you, they might correct you. And I mean, it can open up a whole new avenue of conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm with you. Salomi, do you have any parting words?
No, I think you pretty much summed up everything very well and to the point. I think this is what I was kind of trying to aim at also with my project, was to open this conversation and this dialogue. Just to get started and to like be appreciative of different languages. So I think you guys did an amazing job. I'm so glad you talked about this on your episode. Thank you guys so much to be part of it. And yeah, I think you've covered it all.
Thank you so much for giving us this topic. This was great.
Yeah.
I mean, you've given me a reason to talk about talking, and you just know how much I love to talk.
Thank you so much for joining us, really. I had a very good time here today.
This is great.
And to our listeners, you're probably in 2021 by the time this has released. So
we hope it's going considerably better.
Check out the magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the magazine would have dropped.
We'll when this comes out, the magazine will be out as well. So we'll try to do some linkage to show you how this came out, and we hope that your 2021 is going well. We're speaking to you from the past.
Yeah.
Bhutkal.
Nice.
And happy Bhavishya Kals to all of you.
Yes, अगर आपको ये पॉडकास्ट अच्छा लगा तो और पॉडकास्ट अवेलेबल है ivmpodcast.com और IVM पॉडकास्ट ऐप पे, और अगर आप चाहते हो तो आप मुझे इंस्टाग्राम पे फॉलो कर सकते हो @RYTASH। और आयुषी है, बताएं, मैं बता दूं?
नहीं, मैं कह सकती हूँ, मेरी हिंदी इतनी भी बुरी
बोलो।
नहीं है। अगर आप मुझे इंस्टाग्राम पर फॉलो करना चाहते तो आप फॉलो कर सकते हैं @AyushiA9 और ट्विटर पे मेरा हैंडल है @JustAyushi.
Hi friends, this is a small message from myself and Ayushi.
And on behalf of everyone who puts together Agla Station Adulthood, we just wanted to say that we are going to take a little bit of a break from the show.
For a bit to reevaluate, reassess, reset, come back supercharged, and maybe with some fun new stuff. Who knows?
And we hope that you will continue to listen once we're back. And we promise that it's going to still stay its young, fresh, honest, zany self. But we want to rework it a little bit. So,
absolutely. Yeah. So
thanks for listening so far.
With us. Yes,
and keep in touch. We'll be back.
Okay.
Bye.
Do you wonder what goes inside the mind of an achiever? How do they manage to get back up on their feet in spite of their failures? Do they really do something different? You're absolutely right. Yes, they do. I'm Aditi Surana. Join me every Wednesday and Friday on my show Absolutely Right, where I use my special tool of handwriting analysis, also known as graphology, to interview high performers and study secrets behind their success and personality. You can catch us on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Namaskar, dear friends. My name is Ashish Vidyarthi. Life, as you know, is a journey. And you and I, travelers, how can we celebrate this travel? I have a podcast for you, Begin the Journey. I share stories and moments from my life. Do tune in every Monday and Thursday to listen to my podcast on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from. Cheers.